Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 76th Hunger Games.
My name is Jimmy Cage and this is Mockingjay Part 2, the epic conclusion to the Hunger Games, and like Finnick just said, there are at least some kind of games in this one. Because when you remember the last movie, there wasn't really that much going on. In a franchise that features one of the best archers on screen, Katniss Everdeen has shot only one single arrow. Why talk about it now? Well, Mockingjay Part 2 has similar problems as the first one. Even though there's a lot more action going on now, well, that's not too difficult. The pacing of it all is still way off. There's still a lot of repetition going on, so many scenes that are a little bit too long, and there's not that much variety in terms of mood. The third book by Susan Collins is no longer than the first two ones, so it's simply business to split the finale in two parts. They did it with Harry Potter, Twilight, and while it's not as baffling as the Hobbit decision, it's a shame they did it with Mockingjay. With only 3 movies you would have had a nice little fast-paced trilogy. I think part 1 and 2 combined, maybe finishing at around 2.5 hours, would have been a great conclusion. I would still have some issues with the story, but it would have been more exciting at least. By now it feels that not only the characters, especially Katniss, is worn out by all the killing and war going on in that world of Panem, but I myself get the feeling it went on long enough already. Everything feels very heavy and very dark, and I know that's part of the charm of this franchise, especially now that it's war, but I myself feel kind of blunted by now. The story and the characters can't really surprise me anymore, and there are no situations that really get to me. The war and propaganda themes are explicit, and a part of me think that it's not bad that they address something like that in books and movies for a younger audience, but I personally have some issues with their approach. These movies are so dark in tone and they try to be semi-realistic, and when it's all about those futuristic gladiator battles, I can deal with the world they are creating. But now the games somewhat take place in the capital itself, and you find yourself in an even closer parallel to modern battlefields. You have a team, all in black and heavy armed, moving around bombed city ruins. When there was a specifically designed arena that President Snow and his game makers could control, I bought it. But that's gone, and now they plan deadly traps in the whole capital. How is this all working? Which people do they want to try to entertain and intimidate with all of this? And who should watch this in the midst of war? Am I too stupid to get all this right, or doesn't it make too much sense? With all their so-called peacekeepers, it shouldn't be too difficult to take down a small group of rebels, even if Katniss and her killer friends are among them. The whole war scenario doesn't feel right with me. You never really get a perspective of it all. Where are the front lines? What's with all the civilians? There are huge skyscrapers in the capital, but you never see any people. They say they are evacuated, but are all of them evacuated? Because when our team needs help, they just go to a woman that still lives there. I mean, she can't be the only one, and she isn't, as we later see when President Snow tells the capital people to seek shelter in his palace. So what's with all the traps? I mean, yeah, they are addressing it by saying that they deactivate some to create a secure path, but come on, what was prior to that? Imagine you live in a city where you go out on the streets and all of a sudden a 50 feet tall wave of liquid acid comes right towards you. And there's one point where Katniss and her team are escaping through some kind of subway station and the whole concrete gives away to deadly saws. Who put them there? Did they know they would go exactly that way? Did they put it on every station? What's with the normal residents? But then again, by this point, almost the whole city lay in ruins. They say the real troops are moving in front of our heroes, but to me this whole war scenario seemed very, very strange. The movies and the books picture a dystopian world. By doing so, they of course deal with aspects of our real world. But by almost going fully war movie in these last 2 entries, it begins to fall apart, at least for me. What's also bothering is the grim nature of it all. There are 1 or 2 funny moments when Woody Harrelson is around, but most of the time there's nothing to laugh, and more important, no hope. And that's strange, because the victory, the triumph over dictatorship and oppression is so very close. But maybe that's also what they are going for in these movies. The Hunger Games stories seem to try to show you the effects of war and killing and what it does with your heart and soul. But at the same time they picture a super evil, all-controlling villain like President Snow. It's not all black and white, but it's also not that far away from it. They try to show you the casualties of war, and that defeating one dictator doesn't necessarily mean that there won't be another person who seeks power. But come on, this is a world where there is a super rich, superficial upper class under one single dictator that forces all other districts whose people live in utter poverty to sacrifice young children in a game of life and death. In the end, it's pretty much good versus evil. So please give me some excitement, some hope, some lighter moments. One of my all-time favorite moments in all of cinema is the speech that Sam makes at the end of The Two Towers. Maybe that's a personal preference, but I need some hope and some good in my movies.
It's like in the great stories, Mr. Frodo. The ones that really mattered. Full of darkness and danger they were. And sometimes you didn't want to know the end. Because how could the end be happy? How could the world go back to the way it was when so much bad had happened? But in the end, it's only a passing thing. This shadow. Even darkness must pass. A new day will come. And when the sun shines, it'll shine out the clearer. Those were the stories that stayed with you, that meant something, even if you were too small to understand why. But I think, Mr. Frodo, I do understand. I know now. Folk in those stories had lots of chances of turning back, only they didn't. They kept going. Because they were holding on to something. What are we holding on to, Sam? But there's some good in this world, Mr. Frodo. And it's worth fighting for.
The last scene in the movie is exactly what I want more of. I won't spoil it for you, but that's the spirit I was hoping for. But was that the only thing I liked in the movie? Of course not. After all this rambling, and yeah, I confess also a little nitpicking, The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 2 is still an okay movie. If you like the franchise, I doubt you will be very upset with this one. The performances are again very good. I mean, the movie has 2 Oscar-winning women in leading roles and a whole bunch of other top-notch actors. There are some highly intense scenes, some nice action, and there's nothing terribly wrong with anything in it. It's only that I think it could have been better. First of all, by doing Mockingjay as one movie, and I think I talked enough about my other reasons. I think I could go on in more detail about everything, but this review is already too long and I thank everybody who's still watching. Like always, I would love to hear your thoughts about it and also about the tone of the whole franchise as well. Please tell me in the comments below what you think.